Hey guys, it's Tate. I wanted to explain the difference between flat and scaling damage in this video of BazaarU. Let's dive right into it. So, scaling damage is the concept that as the fight moves on, your weapons or your burn or your poison or whatever will do more damage the longer the fight goes on. So you can kind of see here that the graph starts low, but then over time you're going to be doing more and more damage. Now, the concept behind flat damage is it's just fixed. You're going to be doing the same damage no matter how long the fight goes. So here, the example is we're looking at an item that, let's say, does 10% of an enemy's total health. So if the enemy had 50 health, it would do 5 damage. However, if they had 200, it would do 20, and if they had 1,000, it would do 100. So you can see that sometimes it's a little bit better to use items that say deal 10% of a total health later you are in a Bazaar run. But if you have a item that does 30 fixed damage, if it's the start of the run and your opponent has 50 health, that 30 damage is it's a large percentage of their health. Whereas later in the run, the damage isn't really moving the needle. So in the Bazaar, you really want to focus on getting scaling damage the later into the run you go. Flat damage or flat shield or flat heal is really strong in the early game, but it falls off. Falling off meaning it doesn't scale into the late game as well. So hopefully that helps understand the difference between scaling and flat. I wanted to go through a couple of the win conditions we talked about in the last episode and just highlight where the scaling comes into play. So with the katana on its own is flat damage, but when paired with the shark claws, it becomes scaling damage. The shark claw is going to add damage to the katana. So the first time it hits, it does 5 damage, and then once the shark claws goes off, it'll do 15, and then it'll do 25, and then it'll do 35. So you can kind of see here how that adds to this curve of ramping damage. Burn, it in itself is scaling. As you stack burn on top of itself, it'll do more and more damage. So for example, if you have 10 burn, it'll do 10 damage, 9 damage, 8 damage. But if you had 50 burn, it'll do 50 damage, 49 damage, 48 damage. So burn is a scaling sort of win condition in itself, and that's why you want as much burn as possible because it'll really get to that scaling. It'll get to the top of the curve faster. So in this example for poison, the catfish is getting scaling poison due to the haste. The catfish on its own is flat damage, but when you add the fishing rod to haste it, it's going to gain poison and then do 3 poison and then 5 poison and then 7 poison. So that is scaling your damage, which is helping your win condition. In the ammo win condition, right here, this example, there is no scaling. It's it's lacking it, but if you find it elsewhere in the run, you can add it in. So the haste win condition, the shark ray is a scaling item. It does 40 damage on its own, but as soon as you haste it, it's going to get 10 additional damage. So do 50 damage, and then 60 damage, and then 70 damage. And then slow, the mantis shrimp is a scaling item. It starts out really weak, but every time you slow, it gains damage and burn for the fight. All right. Thanks for listening. Hope you guys learned something today. Thank you.